I was really hoping to be able to demonstrate this better, but it just is not working out all that well for me. Um, so I have got a couple things here that I am wanting to TIG weld, and I have a little bit of moisture in the argon, and that has a couple effects on things. Like I said, this is not a good example of it, but there's a little bit of like a spider web pattern in the weld there. It kind of like, like on the ripples, it kind of, splays out like so. And you can see the little bit of like a soot line on the end here. That soot could be from a little bit of contamination in the metal. But the main thing that I wanted to show here was what a little bit of moisture in the argon does to the end of the tungsten. Hmm. Naturally, it's always really hard to get a good view of this on the camera, but it's it's very apparent under the hood while you're welding. There's basically this like uh, fuzz or what looks like mold or something growing on the end of the tungsten. And of course, TIG welding is a rather sensitive process to very sensitive to, well, really all variables, but especially contamination. Um, and So this is what I have noticed with, like I said, moisture in the argon, and I'll show you why I have that in the gas. Um, in this particular instance. But one of the ways that you can get moisture in the gas is just simply getting contaminated gas from your supplier. Which thankfully is not the case for me. But so this is what I was welding off of here, a Everlast 256 SI, I believe it is, but it is a stick TIG plasma machine. And when I am plasma cutting, what I will do is I will run a air hose into the back of this regulator filter setup here. And that is like a normal like filter dryer, and then an oil coalescing filter, which I don't really understand why that's different or special, but it's there. And then a desiccant bead dryer, and you can see that those are all pink and saturated with moisture. And then coming out of that setup there, this is the hose for the Everlast. I actually have one of these little motor guard desiccant filters on the end of it there, and then that feeds it into the machine. And because the beads in that filter there got saturated, they had allowed a little bit of moisture to pass by and get into this little desiccant filter here, so that now when I'm hooked up to TIG weld from my argon cylinder, I just plug it in like so, and it goes into the machine. But because the beads had been saturated, now that we have really dry argon flowing through it, the moisture from the beads is getting leached, if you will, into the argon and going out to the TIG torch. These beads are supposed to look like that color there. Oh man, you really can't tell as well on camera. It's much more apparent to eye, but the beads in the right hand filter are more pink than the ones on the left. So in this case here, the reason I'm getting moisture out to the torch is because of the moisture that was trapped in this guy here that is now being released into the argon stream going out to the torch. And so that, brings up the question of why have these. I have since switched gas suppliers, and with the new gas supplier, I have not had an issue with it. But with the last gas supplier, I was actually receiving contaminated gas that had a fair bit of moisture in it. And so I put these on here for one to dry the gas that came in the cylinder, but also to act as like a visual indicator. Because like I was saying, this one over here is what it should look like. This hose here is set up to my MIG welder. And so because I have nice dry gas from my supplier now, these are nice and, like a dark, brilliant blue. If I was to switch cylinders and I noticed that this started to turn pink, then I would know that I would have a contaminated cylinder with moisture in it. Also, you can see that I've got my gas set up on just like a quick connect here. And I like personally, I just like this. It kind of makes life easy and what have you, but it introduces the possibility to get contamination into the line. And these motor guard filters here not only have the desiccant in them, but there's like a sintered bronze filter on this end here, and a sintered bronze filter on this side as well too. And you can kind of the damn thing would focus, and I don't know how to manually focus this thing. Anyways, I guess you have to take my word for it. There's a little bronze filter in there, so that'll help deal with any contamination that potentially gets into the system. But I also thought it was kind of interesting. So if you look at okay, yeah, I guess you can see it pretty well there. On the left hand side is where the argon comes in from the cylinder, and then the right hand side is it going out to the machine. And so you can actually see there's like a color gradient across the beads there. And what that's from is as the argon is flowing through here, of course it hits this end first and then goes through. So it's drying out this, like the beads at the top here are getting dried first before the rest of them, which I think is kind of like a cool little visual illustration there, if you will. And so, yeah, on one hand, this kind of seems, stupid, because of this setup now, I am now introducing moisture into the TIG welder. However, I do have a Ingersoll Rand refrigerated air dryer, and the air that comes out of it is actually so dry that it will dry out the desiccant beads like this. And when I run the air, God damn it, words are hard. What the fuck am I trying to say? Normally, when I'm using the plasma cutter, I will use air that goes through the refrigerated air dryer. And it is so dry that the beads in this filter here never get saturated in the first place. And those beads there will be, a like perfect blue color and very, very dry. The last time that I used my plasma cutter, I was basically just being lazy and I didn't set up my refrigerated air dryer. I don't yet have the refrigerated air dryer like permanently plumbed into the shop. That's something that I need to do, like an upcoming project or whatever. All right, kind of forgot where I was there. But yeah, so normally this is not an issue with those beads and these getting contaminated. Like I said, it's just because I was too lazy to set up the refrigerated air dryer. And until such time as I get the refrigerated air dryer mounted, I'm just going to run the plasma cutter off of this one here and just plug that one into there and leave this one on the argon. And I think what I'm going to do too is maybe make some kind of framework above this welder here to where this one can sit on top of this one. This one here is also a stick TIG plasma machine. And on one hand, I don't really want to have a, 1,000-pound, I mean, shit, how much is, it's probably getting pretty close to 1,000 pounds. Got a 50-pound cylinder of carbon dioxide and a K cylinder of argon on a pretty beefy framework with these two and that. Yeah, I'd probably get in there. But anyways, on one hand, I don't really want to have too much junk on this cart, but at the same time, it is kind of handy to have like everything set up all in one place. And I suppose, if I was to leave that one set up with the plasma and this one set up as TIG, that wouldn't be too bad of a deal. But yeah, anyways, I just wanted to show that right quick. And yeah, if you're having problems, like weird issues with the tungsten, if you will, burning weird and weird patterns and contamination and shit on your TIG welds, I personally think that it would be a very good idea to install one of these guys here, and then that will let you know if your gas has a bunch of moisture in it or not. Welding Tips and Tricks also posted a video about this issue, and he did kind of like a DIY desiccant dryer. These things here are super cheap, relatively speaking. They're like $10. Made in US, really good quality, and I like the bronze filters on either end. And when these do get saturated, say if you had a contaminated bottle of gas, and instead of the gas drying these things, if it got them saturated, you can actually put these things in the oven. I've taken these and stuck them in the oven at I think 225 degrees or something like that. Leave them in there for like an hour or something, and they will actually dry out. On one hand, these are plastic, but they seem like a nylon or something. They are like a pretty good quality plastic, and I've had good luck with drying those things out. Yeah. Suppose that's it. I was just thinking that maybe the reason that causes the end of the tungsten to get all fucked up and weird looking the way that it does is that the arc off the end of the tungsten is, of course, extremely hot. And if there's a little bit of water in there, then potentially it's hot enough to disassociate the oxygen from the water and essentially oxidize the end of the tungsten a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. Just curious to get people's thoughts on if that's why that happens.